Welcome to Reaching Abundance. I'm Virginia Elder, your host. This is the podcast where you get weekly cliff notes on developing mental fortitude and podcast marketing strategies from top business owners. Ready to level up your show? Start by booking a call with me using the link in the episode description. Let's get into the episode. Jen Smith, co-host of the Frugal Friends Podcast, is our guest this week. Y'all, the Frugal Friends Podcast started a whopping 7 years ago. So Jen's been through it all as a podcaster and a content creator. Layoffs, becoming a mom, TikTok as a new social media platform, the rise of video, AI becoming popular, and the many Google and Apple algorithm and analytics changes over the past few years. Not only am I so excited for you to hear how she's designed her show, the Frugal Friends Podcast, and her book, Buy What You Love Without Going Broke, to create abundance in her life, be an authentic reflection of her values, and to be this helpful, solutions-based content to real people's money management. But I'm also really jazzed for you to hear some of her tips and lessons learned about spending money in your business. Before we get rolling, I want you to think about whether you've traditionally identified as a spender or a saver, and listen up for Jen's take on that. It will change the way you see your money habits. Here we go. Jen, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, of course, first question right off the bat, what is your definition of abundance?
For me, abundance is being able to afford the things money can't buy. The things that are most important to us are obviously, they don't have a price tag, but they still require money to pursue. For me, it would be enough financial abundance, time abundance, mental abundance. When you have those things, you can have the things that money can't buy, and vice versa. When your cup is filled with those things, then it just provides for more time freedom, mental freedom, financial freedom. They all work in tandem.
I agree. I think when you have the mental capacity to dive into a topic and plan something well, do the research or buy the tools that you need to create the thing that you wanted, that isn't available when you're stressed, under the weather, struggling with debt, whatever the case is that negativity on you, it really just caps out everything else. So share with me a little bit about the recent news, which is right next to you, and how this is really creating abundance in your life, or how you've designed things to allow yourself to feel abundant.
Well, I hope you're talking about my new book, Buy What You Love Without Going Broke, because you could also be talking about my water. It's really important to stay hydrated throughout this journey, especially if you're going to be podcasting, but talking a lot.
Yes.
This book has been a culmination of, almost 7 years of podcasting, and a true journey of starting the podcast, thinking it's about one thing, and then having our own, Jill and I, Jill's my co-host, having our personal transformations, and the podcast growing into what it is now, and trying to help people make their own personal transformations. So for us personally, Frugal Friends started as a show about how to save money, and has grown into a show about how do we spend money wisely, because everyone spends. Everyone is a spender. Everyone can be a saver. And so how do we balance both of those? We love podcasting. We're obsessed with this long form content, but we want to figure out a way to distill everything we've been talking about into an easier to understand format. And that's where the book came in. we wanted to reach a wider audience that may not know of our show because they're not searching for a frugality podcast, but they may be interested in books. And so traditional publishing was the route that we chose to get that wider distribution, to spread the ideas farther and also spread the podcast farther.
So most people start creating content online because they're thinking, okay, I have to reach people outside of my immediate bubble, my town, my business, my current client list, whatever that is. And so they think about creating content online. There's a few things that I want to pull out there. You've been podcasting for 7 years. Holy moly. And I know it was like way back in February, you guys celebrated 6 million downloads. So I'm sure you're like accelerated past that.
We celebrated personally 7 million. I don't think we made a post about it.
Gosh.
Yeah, we just passed 7.
Congrats. That's amazing. And I want that to be heard through the lens of you committed a lot of time and energy into building this long-term thing. So many people get discouraged within their first few episodes, within their first year, within their first 2 years, thinking like, oh, I don't have 1 million downloads. We have to back that up and say, hang on, like, was that your goal? And what are the benefits that you're getting from it in those early days? And to realize that when you commit 7 years to something, I mean, think about like a career. When you've been working in the same career for 7 years, yes, you've gotten several promotions and raises and bonuses and different things. And that's kind of the same way that we have to look at content creation sometimes, because now 7 years later, now you have the book deal and now you have the opportunity to reach an even broader audience. So help business owners a little bit more on this train of thought. What was your long-term plan back when you started in 2018? And share a little more about, like you said, it shifted in time.
Yeah. So podcasting really was meant to just open me into a different audience, but also just give me a different medium in which to like get information out into the world. I was a financial journalist for a website called The Penny Hoarder, and I was a writer. I wasn't a podcaster. I didn't have any interest in doing audio or video content. And I got into it kind of like by just a series of events. I got this full-time job. I still wanted to do something for myself, but I didn't want to do more writing on top of the full-time writing job I was already going to be doing. And at the time, my friend Eric was saying, you should start a podcast because I want to get into podcasting. I will edit it so that I have a portfolio to show and get a paid gig in podcasting. And he's like, you should start it with my wife. And I was like, well, if you're going to be editing it, then I guess I kind of have to start it with your wife. But I don't plan on doing it very long, so we'll see. And so fast forward 7 years later, we've never missed a week. And now we do twice a week. He did get that job in podcasting. He no longer edits our show because he's like so high up in his company now. So yeah, like that was the original point, and it's evolved because I no longer work full-time as a writer. I was then freelancing, but I felt like I had a book in me. I felt like I had something more in me. So I took a break. Once the podcast started making money, I took a break from freelance writing to kind of start going with whatever this was. It's taken me to a place that I never imagined was possible.
Wow. Can you describe that place?
Yeah. So now we are part of the iHeart Podcast Network. So they take care of our advertising. And it was because of our connection to iHeart and our just connection to other podcasters in general that we were able to negotiate for a multi-six-figure book deal.
Yeah.
And I had never anticipated like those two things.
That's awesome. Tell me about the build up to this. Like, at what point did you shift and go full time into content creation and podcasting? What was the journey like? Like, how many years did you keep working, keep building this, what is now a well-oiled machine? What was that transition like?
So we started in 2018. I had my son in 2019 and went into freelancing. In 2020, we really took off. People wanted to know how to save money over the pandemic. Apple featured us on their homepage for a while.
Yeah.
So we were in the right place at the right time. And we looked at what the podcasters around us who'd been doing it a little longer were doing. And they were going into networks. 2021 was a right place, right time to join a network in podcasting. Being in the right place at the right time just comes from being aware of your surroundings. So like we knew in 2020, we focused on the topics that were most pertinent, most searched for in Google, like in the world, and what our place was. We didn't try to go be something else. We knew who we were, and we tried to be the most helpful version of who we were for the time. I still think all of our topics were evergreen. They were just like more important in that season. And then in 2021, we joined the network because that's what we saw other people were doing. We weren't guaranteed, but we just started to look. Like one smaller network reached out to us. We got connected with another network that our friend was using. We reached out to another, and we ended up going with iHeart because they offered us the best like monetary and distribution package. And so that's kind of where 2020 and 2021 things started taking off. In October of 2023, was it 23 that we had the Apple like reset? It looks like it set us back, but I know it's like it made it more, the numbers more authentic. So like we've just been seeing steady growth. There hasn't been like we didn't get on Tim Ferriss or Lewis Howes, or we don't have like a very famous people on our show. Like we're not using methods like that. We're just trying to be as helpful as possible and as relevant in the times as possible. And that has created very devoted fan base.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2022, I started pursuing agents. Again, I'm looking around and I'm seeing, okay, a lot of our friends are publishing books. So let's try it because I feel like this is something I want to do. And I didn't look at people because they were also starting YouTube channels. And so I was like, I don't want to do YouTube. I want to do books. So I chose the path that was right for me.
Yeah.
And Jill came along because she's such a good sport. She preferred it as well. And we ended up getting the agent and the book deal in 2022, 23. The years are blending together now.
Same.
Right? The book went to auction. It happened on my birthday. And yeah, it was one of the best birthday gifts I've ever received.
Yeah, that is amazing. So I really like a few things that are in that story that I want to highlight. You chose the right path for you, not what everyone else was doing, although you did pull from your peers, your friends, your connections, go, okay, like what would be a good choice for me? Just because they were going to YouTube didn't necessarily make you have to do that, but there were plenty of people also publishing books that you were able to learn from. So I think it's always important to surround yourself with people that are doing big things, maybe more experienced than you, that you can learn from. That's a big piece to highlight there. And then the other thing I loved was the way you were creating your content at the time. You're saying right time, right place, which kind of alludes to luck a little bit, but I think there was so much more there because you were doing the research on the issues people are facing through the pandemic and how can we help them. So that focus on serving people, being helpful, really doing the research on, okay, what's true to us that we can share on. So I love that piece of it. At the top of the episode, you mentioned something about we started this as like a frugal podcast, and then now it's a how to spend money podcast. I know where you're going with that because I've been with the FinCon crowd and in this space for a long time, but can you share when did that shift and what was the realization there?
The thing is that we think frugality isn't a spending race to the bottom. Frugality isn't being cheap. It's being a good steward of your resources. So that is your financial resources, your time resources, your physical space, natural resources. And the thing about stewardship is it is this consumption and contribution cycle. It's both. And so we will always spend money. We will always spend time. So to think of frugality as just wanting less, consuming less is a lie. It's good spending of it. That's why we shifted away from how do I spend as little as possible to how do I spend as intentionally as possible. And that shift came in 2019 when I switched from my W-2 job to freelancing when I had my son. I didn't do it by choice. I was probably contributing about 40% of our household income to retirement. We were going hard. We had just finished in 2017 paying off $78,000 of debt in under 2 years.
Amazing.
So we just shifted gears from debt to retirement. And so we were going really hard. Then I was laid off in a mass layoff of 45 people. And that was about 7-8 weeks before I gave birth. And I could no longer be as aggressive. I was finding my identity and my satisfaction in how good I was doing at money. And I suddenly couldn't anymore because I couldn't just go out and jump into another job. It was like that 6 months to a year. And then we had the pandemic right after I felt like I'd recovered. 2020 hit. So that was when I had to reestablish what I believed frugality to be. Because I was like, this is actually how people live, like potentially on one income or two incomes that are small with kids. Like people are spending money. Normal people are not putting 40% of their income, cannot put 40% of their income into their retirement. That doesn't make them bad with money. I feel like I'm still good with money. So where is this radical middle, like that nobody's talking about? They're either talking about make as much money as you can so you can spend as much as possible or invest as much as possible, or you don't need to make any money, just practice minimalism, have one chair. Like all that stuff. It's all extremes because that's what goes viral and that's what algorithms pick up on.
Yeah.
But where's the unsexy radical middle that most people are living in? And how do we make content that centers in on that?
I love that. Because I can think of like the ways that we spend intentionally in our personal lives and ways that, we're frugal. Like I know when the meat is marked down at my local supermarket and things like that on the personal side of life in our families, with our kids, whatever. Can you share some ideas or even things that you've done in the business side of things that are frugal or spending intentionally? Just help the business owners out. Like, how can we look at our business spending?
Yeah. We look at core values as being, we call them the 4 Fs: family, friends, faith, and fulfilling work. And so for us, fulfilling work isn't about, making as little as possible, working at your philanthropic nonprofit, like reaching transcendence, whatever. It's really like that self-actualization part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs that is we are motivated by the opportunity to be creative, to be innovative, to feel like we are individuals and unique and we're allowed to live into that. So that's our highest human needs. And that's where we feel like work comes in. And so that's how we want to focus spending of our money and our time and our space. Especially as entrepreneurs, we have control over so much of that. When we work for employers, you may not have as much control over that. So then you are looking more at, okay, if I can't fill my cup up in the fulfilling work part, how can I look at these other parts? But as entrepreneurs, we do have so much control over how we are fulfilled in our work. So it would be spending on ways that fulfill that creativity need. And sometimes you're going to make mistakes. So like writing the book was one of those things that was a self-actualization, like fulfilling work move for us. That made us a good amount of money. So it was a win there. But in order to get the deal, we invested $5,000 in a coach that would help us write the proposal, because the proposal for a nonfiction book is so important. That ended up being money not well spent, if we're being honest. We were willing to spend money in order to do something we thought would make money.
Yes.
But we ended up going with nothing that we got out of that experience.
Wow.
I know. It was just like a gut thing. And there was no shade on her. She's helped a lot of people write a lot of great book proposals. But we just didn't need to spend that money, and we thought we did. On the other hand, we have spent money on giveaways and gifts and incentives to get people to buy the book. And that was really money well spent. We didn't spend money on PR because a lot of people said they spent money on PR and they thought it wasn't worth it. But there are some days I wish that we had, even on partial PR, just to save us time.
Okay.
Because we were capable of doing our own PR, which is why we didn't spend money on it. But in the end, there was only so many minutes in the day for us to do it. So to have somebody else on the team also pursuing would have saved us time and energy. So there's no one size fits all for where to invest in work.
Right.
I know a lot of people who've spent money on business coaches, they totally regret, and business coaches that have totally changed their lives and their businesses, right? Mm-hmm. It comes back again is to making connections.
Yes.
And relationships with people, watching what other people are doing, because it was through those relationships and through that observation, those are the most places where we found success in making money and where to spend money.
Yeah. You totally hit the nail on the head, because every year when I look back at my business spending, there's always something that I spent money on that I didn't use, or it didn't pan out, or for whatever reason I'm thinking it wasn't worth it. Whether it was a program I signed up for and never logged into, or if it was something that just didn't help in the way that I thought it would, whatever it is. Like you said, various opportunities abound to spend money. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And sometimes you have to make that financial commitment to something before you can even have a gut judgment on, this is working, or no, it's not. But I still think it's a great spend because there was a lesson in it.
Yes.
You had that opportunity to say, I'm really not connecting with this coach, or I'm really not connecting with this program that I signed up for, whatever it was. It's still a valuable lesson. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, instead of beating ourselves up oh, why did I spend $5,000 on that? Or why did I spend, to always look back and say, okay, well, what did I get still out of that? And it's got to be some kind of lesson, some type of, okay, well, maybe there's a way I can speak with the person I'm going to be working with before I contract, or there's got to be something that I can do going forward that makes that money worth it.
Yeah. And it's always been about learning for us. Whenever we spend money, we're always trying to save time, make more money, or learn something. And hopefully we make money or save time. But if we don't, we'll at least learn something.
Yeah. Well, the other thing in that is, most services are available out there to save us some level of struggle or time. Mm-hmm. And you spend something anyways, right? You're either going to spend your time doing it and your energy doing it, or you're going to spend money for someone else to do it. So it's that trade-off that you were highlighting earlier. What do you want to spend? And what, are you maxed out on time? Okay, well, then maybe it's useful to spend the money to have some help. Or if you have the time, okay, then do it yourself and save that money.
Yeah, that $5,000 we spent on that coach, we didn't use the content, but it proved to us that we should be more confident in what we know to be most valuable to our listeners. It gave us a lot of confidence in pursuing what the book should really be about. And so we kind of bought that confidence with that purchase, because we were this is traditional publishing is so foreign to us. Yeah. We want to do something that's going to work. So we don't want to be too different. And I think it helped us find that like balance and give us the confidence that we needed to like be true to ourselves.
I like that. So you mentioned it's always about learning. Can you share some things you've learned in your online content creation, so the podcasting space, as your journey has progressed? What are some lessons that you could give? Like, all right, y'all, for those of you starting a podcast this year,
Yeah.
do it this way. This is what I learned.
So I will give 2 tips. One I did, one I would do if I was starting now that I didn't do.
Cool.
So the first one is, and this is how I started the show and how I still think about it to an extent,
Awesome.
is that people are not tuning in for me and my expertise. They're tuning in for themselves and their problems to get solved. So we have always been a solutions first show and people second. And now we are up there. We are the reason people keep tuning in, but they tune in first to get a solution to their problems. They don't tune back in if they don't get that solution. And they don't turn back in even if they do get the solution, but they don't like the hosts. So we first went to Google and just Googled like how to save money on, and then let it auto-fill. Those were our first 10 episodes.
Perfect.
Is just those autofill. How to save money on wedding, how to save money on transportation, how to save money on blah, 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 blah. So that was really our first, because I, as a listener to podcasts, would go in and listen to shows based on the problems I was having. Like, yeah, a Google article is fine, but I'd like to hear people talk about it. And so that's kind of how we structured our show and our content. And we kind of still do that. We take a little bit more creative liberty now, but we still try to think, what are the problems people are having right now? And how can we uniquely help them solve it? I called it SEO podcasting. And so a lot more people are doing that now.
Yeah.
Honestly, even though more people are doing it, I think it's a lot more effective now in podcasting because Google searching is going down the tubes.
Yeah.
I Google for a living because our show is, we Google a phrase and we take an article or two from the first page and we tell people like what in it is fluff and what is actually useful. Like that is the premise of the show. And I have seen Google, as it implements more AI, the results it's giving is just trash.
Yeah.
So people are seeing that and they're going to alternative methods to find answers. And I think one of those is podcasts.
Yeah.
So if you can search engine optimize your show title, your episode title, and the episode description, then you have a really good shot of getting found. The second thing that I didn't do, but I would do, is I would start as a video first show instead of an audio first. I like the Money Guys, how they have structured their show. They're a video first. They just use the audio from their edited video as their audio show. That is how I would start it. And I wouldn't do big production. I wouldn't do anything fancy with cameras, like right off the bat. Because I think that's how, like, the minimalists just stopped doing their video and they only do audio. And I think they just made it, for a lack of a better word, too complex. You know, like it was an intense, like, studio type show.
Yeah.
And so they lost their producer and they lost their video show as a result. So, like, when we do video, here's our hack, is that we'll do a mic and then attach to the mic a Bluetooth mic that's attached to the phone. We do that because we're an audio first show, and sometimes we'll just use this is when we're just doing strictly YouTube videos. That's because we're sticklers about audio. I don't think you have to be as stickler as we are. So doing it video first and then just uploading audio to an RSS as simply as possible, but getting a video editor to make the video aesthetically like pleasing in ways, and even funny, adding little like GIFs and not like B-roll that's tacky, but just funny little like sticker and memes and just stuff like that, upping the entertainment value and keeping that in the audio version too. You don't have to take it out. Yeah. And I would study the Money Guys. They're doing it obviously at scale, but they're a good example
Thank you. I love all of that. I haven't seen the Money Guys stuff, but I'm going to go check it out now. So
YouTube was a big growth driver for them. And I wouldn't do it just for growth. It's like hedging your bets. Like you could, your audio and your video, so you have double the chance of getting noticed or succeeding on a platform.
Yeah.
And you're not doing any extra work, really. You're editing video, and then you're just extracting audio from that and uploading it to your host.
Yeah. That's been, I think, the beautiful part of this whole transition since the pandemic, because I think that's really where it started, was this need for connection. Like we were just dying to see someone else's face without a mask on.
Yeah.
YouTube has existed for all this time, but that was kind of the shift, was like, okay, sure, I have a blog, or sure, I have a podcast or whatever, but let me just hook up a camera and let me put this on YouTube too. And there's this whole other audience. And so for a little while, people thought, oh, it's the same audience. They're going to watch both or listen to both. And it's different. And so it's created this opportunity for streamlining the recording processes, which is super exciting, streamlining the post-production processes, which is also exciting. And then to be able to have a couple of different audiences. So like we talked about this earlier, you did this book versus podcast. A lot of people are doing YouTube versus podcast. But even for my business, that's where we've shifted as well. We've leaned into the video piece, and we've created packages that are just for this video first production piece. And I get questions all the time about, like what you said, connect the Bluetooth mic and have that routed either to your phone or a camera. That way you are getting both and you can repurpose it. But it's been really fun to come up with creative solutions like within that space. So thank you so much for highlighting that.
You did not pay me to say any of that.
Correct.
That was totally, you didn't tell me to either.
Correct.
That's all on my own.
Exactly. So that's the fun part about talking to creators, is like, what did you do? How do you do it? What are some tips? And it always comes out that, there's something that either I'm learning or that is what we do that I'm coaching clients on. It's fun to hear what other people are doing and what's working well. And then even getting a couple of notes on, oh, hey, go follow this person, go check out what they're doing. So I love that, because not only am I going to go check it out, but people watching and listening are going to go check it out too. So thank you so much. Now, I want to also strongly agree with you that video just adds this additional layer of complication. I kind of mentioned to you at the beginning of this episode, well, yeah, I had to like run and do my makeup really fast because I was sitting here working without makeup on. And knowing that I'm going to be on video, I just can't show up with no makeup. Like my eyes were swollen today. I'm having allergies. Like I was preparing a roast this morning, so I was chopping onions. So of course, like I looked terrible when I actually showed up to my desk to work. So there's all these different things that go on in the background of our personal lives or work lives, so that when we know, okay, I have to get on video today for this podcast, whether it's your show or a guesting situation, it's just more complicated. So the more we can uncomplicate it, the better, which is where some of the methods and things that you mentioned are helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think YouTube is like the end all be all, like that people say it is. Podcasting is the easiest way to repurpose YouTube content, not necessarily vice versa. So when we think of ourselves as an audio first show, video makes it more complex.
Yeah.
But when we think of ourselves as a video first show, then it's just natural to add that podcast element. So I think it's just a really simple, powerful way to hedge your bets on reaching people.
Yeah. I want to say, like back in 2018, getting on video as a podcaster wasn't a thing almost. Like I'm sure some people did it, but it wasn't the quote unquote normal decision matrix that it is today. Today, the conversations I'm having are more about lifestyle and business and, okay, are you comfortable having your home office on video, or do we need to get a green screen? Like, what's your setup? Are you going to go to a studio? And we're having these conversations around either why you would or would not want to do video as we're talking about launching a podcast. So it's like this entire different set of questions and complication. And like, well, if you do audio only, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what time it is. It doesn't matter if you're recording in your closet hiding from your kids. It doesn't matter. There's all these different list of positives of why you would do audio only. But then there's this whole list of positives of why you would do video only. Tying this back to that it probably wasn't normal to get on video back in 2018. And even maybe now, maybe you don't like being on video. So could you share a little bit about your decision matrix? I know you went with book versus YouTube, but can you dig a little deeper and tell us more there?
A simple answer is in our contract with iHeart, they have first advertising rights to the show. So putting it on YouTube allows advertising outside of the RSS feed. So now we do post to YouTube, but it's through the RSS feed. So iHeart still gets their cut. So that was a decision made for us. But that is something that we're going to revisit in our next contract negotiations on how we can do more video and highlight it as something that could help grow the show and grow revenue. So that was 2 years ago when we made the decision to go with book. It was a little easier for us to make that decision. Otherwise, I would love to see less aesthetic YouTubing. Vlogs have always reigned supreme on YouTube, but for some reason, we've got these podcasters that have these really elaborate setups. For some reason, they can afford to take up a whole room in their house for their podcast studio, and it looks immaculate. No toddler has run in there and thrown all the books and knickknacks off the shelf or knocked over those aesthetic backlights, right? Which is unheard of.
It's not normal
for me. So I'd like to see less aesthetic, more not vlog style, but just that really casual style of podcasting where, yes, we're valuing the audio quality. So maybe we're in a closed room, but maybe we're in a closet. Who cares, right? Like, and we're honest about it. Let's just be more real and authentic because the listeners love to see our faces. They love to see your face. The people who love you want to see you. So how can we get over our preconceived notions of having to be perfect and just get out there?
Yeah.
So that's what I would love to see. I'm loving this trend on social media where people are moving away from high aesthetic to real life. And I want to see the same in video podcasting.
Oh, that's cool. I'm going to build on your statement there and say 100% people, of course, first follow the content and the solutions like you mentioned earlier. But the second level is the host. Do I like you? Do I identify with you? Do you get me? Is your life kind of like mine? Or could I see some similarities there? Is your kitchen like totally 80s, but the rest of your house is fixed up? Like what's the situation happening? And are we the same in any way, right? That's kind of what a true fan is really looking for, is that personal connection, even though you don't know their name, you don't know who they are. They think they have a friendship with you, a connection with you, because they listen to you every day. So we have to be able to kind of pull back the curtain and make it less of a behind the scenes moment and more of a, this is my life. This is real.
Yeah.
This is my messy floor.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean you have to share everything. It just means we share from a more authentic place.
Yeah.
What
that
we do
authenticity, I think, is what everyone is searching for.
Yeah.
And you can see in my video, like you can see my chair set up and things behind me. And this is my home office, right?
I'm not wearing any makeup.
Right. Well, and I threw my hair up and, it was just kind of like, okay, well, this will be more chill. So I appreciate that we can be chill
it takes
together.
the pressure off and you can create better content when you're not worrying about the aesthetic.
Because your focus is no longer on what's in my background. What do I look like? Is everything perfect? And it's more on, like you said, the SEO answers to this commonly asked question, or how can I use this story to teach this lesson, or it's more content focused instead of looking perfect.
Yeah. And the trolls will come out.
For sure.
They'll be like, you look so tired. I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. I'm spending 12 hours a day promoting this book.
And the other 12 chasing my kids.
Because nobody sleeps.
Yes.
So yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
That's the season I'm in.
And there will be a ton of people that identify with you for that season because they're in that same season too. Maybe not promoting a book, but maybe with kids or whatever else is going on, they're going to connect with you there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really encouraging for people who want to jump behind the camera or jump behind the mic and they want to start this thing. They have great messages to share, but they just have not because they're just afraid to get on camera or afraid that, oh, my office isn't set up yet. Whatever the excuse is why they can't do the thing, it's completely holding them back.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been anything else that you, in hindsight, of course, because we never realize we're doing it at the moment, but has there been anything else like that that has held you back, where you look back at like the past 7 years and you're like, oh, I should have done that earlier?
Yeah. I feel like some of it, I think it's just like come at the right times for us. I feel like in hindsight, I could look back and like, oh, I wish we'd done the book sooner, or I wish we'd played around on social media and stayed consistent with it sooner. But like, it just comes down to what your capacity is in each season. And I had a baby 2 years ago, my second baby 2 years ago. I had my first 5 years ago. So the past 5 years have been like that first business second.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the season of life I'm in. So I didn't have time to do everything at the right time. Because like when I say right place, right time, you can't always be at the right place at the right time. You've got to just think, what's the next right place to be in that I can be in? And it doesn't always pan out. You don't always get lucky when you're in the right place, but at least you know you're in the right place. So if you do get lucky, it's going to get you somewhere that you want to go. Like I was on TikTok in 2021 and I was just trying to play to the algorithm, and I ended up going viral for a video on investing and side hustles. Two things that I know a lot about, I've written a lot about, but I do not enjoy talking about. And now the TikTok algorithm still will not, unless it has to do with like investing, IRAs, or side hustles, does not show any of the videos I make.
Huh.
Right? So,
Yeah.
Because it doesn't consider me an expert in those things. So it only wants to show the most expert content. It's trying.
Yeah.
You can't fault it for that, I guess. Or maybe you can. So like, I wasn't in the right place, but I went viral at the right time. You just gotta be intentional about what you're doing at all times.
Let's bring it back to your book for a minute, because I want everyone to buy one. So I see it right there. Buy What You Love Without Going Broke. I watched your unboxing video. It's so cute. I love your face in that video. You're just, the open mouth, like it's so cute. So tell us a little bit about, of course, where we can get it, and maybe give us a little sneak peek of what we can expect in there.
Yes. So we wrote Buy What You Love Without Going Broke as a guide to help people learn the skill of spending. We think spending is not a personality trait like spender versus saver. It's a skill. And the reason so many people make budgets they can't stick to is because they have not developed the skills needed to execute the plan they've created. And that is what this book is. It's all about how to spend money without going broke. So how do we identify what we value? How do we spend in alignment with it? How do we say no to what we don't value? And how do we make discerning yeses and nos around the things that we may or may not value, but do not have as much control over our yeses and nos on? So that's what this book is. And we think it's going to be helpful for overspenders, oversavers, anybody in the financial industry, because there really is not a book like this. We emphasize the importance of investing and making money, but we don't talk about those things. We're not talking about life insurance. We're not talking about personal finance. We're talking about how to spend money, how to consume at a rate that is feasible for your income and also for the environment at large. Like that's a small undertone in the book, but we believe an important one.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. I love that.
Yeah.
Couple values there that I just get really excited about. Where can we find it and where can we follow you?
Yeah, so you can find it wherever books are sold, hopefully at your local indie bookshop, but definitely bookshop.org. And buywhatyoulovebook.com can give you the links to some of those. You can choose your favorite retailer and catch Frugal Friends Podcast wherever you're listening to this podcast for continuing education on how to spend money.
Thank you so much, Jen. This was just wonderful. I'm so excited to get my copy. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Virginia. It's been very fun to geek out about podcasting, which I don't get to do often. It's usually geeking out about spending money,
Yay.
But I love both.
I'd love to hear which piece of this conversation meant the most to you today. Head to reachingabundance.com/convo. If you're ready to market your business effectively with a podcast, let's talk. Click the book a call link in the description and I'll take it from there. Thanks for listening to Reaching Abundance. I'm Virginia Elder and I'll be back next week with another insightful episode for you. Follow me on Instagram @podcastabundance to stay connected in the meantime.